Since we came in today, there's been one topic, consistent. And so that makes me feel good because for weeks, I like to get the word ahead of time. Usually when I got a word, I got the next word right on top of it. And it's like I need to take my time, because then I get ahead of the game. Then it's coming out in my lesson. It's coming out over here. It's coming out when I'm talking to somebody. So I try to, but I like it that way because it gives me time to meditate on it. But there are those times that it just ain't happening. And so it's Wednesday, and I'm like, I got nothing to talk about. Yahweh, you got to help me. And I'm reading the word, and I'm looking at different stuff. And so there's one thing that I had started a story, and the story is going to play part in my message. But when I did the story, a scripture came to mind, and that's been the topic for the day. And it's about knowing his voice. So I'm going to put two scriptures together. It's Ephesians 4:14, and then John 10, 1 through 5. That we henceforth be no more children, tossed to and fro, and carried about with every wind of doctrine, by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive. John, I tell you the truth, the man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. So now both of these scriptures are actually talking exactly about the same thing. In Ephesians, prior to the 14th verse, Paul's talking about one of the reasons that Yahshua came and died and rose again was to give gifts unto men. And the gifts he focuses on in this chapter are the ministering gifts: pastors, prophets, evangelists, teachers, apostles. All those gifts deal with speaking. They're speaking gifts. They're people who teach the word of Yahweh in some form or shape, some more so than others. And he says that the reason that he gave these gifts is for the unifying of the body, that we be no more children tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine, which is recognizing the voice. So, in other words, we need to recognize the voice, then we won't be tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine. I don't know if you know anybody or any people, but there are some people that I have known that they come to you with a question. You answer their question, and then maybe they listen to a TV evangelist or somebody else, and they get a different spin on it. And so they believe they received what you said, but now they flipped it because they're over here listening to this. And then the next week they're over here believing this. That's what he's talking about, tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine, because they don't recognize the voice. They don't know who it is that's talking to them. And notice why, when he's saying this, it's by the sleight of men. This is false doctrines. Once saved, always saved. Prosperity message. All these doctrines that lead you into false security or believing something that ultimately could be detrimental to your soul's salvation. And they do this by cunning craftiness, whereby they lay in wait to deceive. So it's carefully, plotted and planned, not necessarily by these men that do it, but by the adversary, by the devil, who uses these ministers to confuse, to divide, to conquer. And some of these people are never going to know this until they're on that side of judgment, and he's telling them, "Depart from me, ye worker of iniquity, I never knew you." So it's very important to recognize the voice. Now in John, Yahshua is telling, and this is Yahshua talking. He is talking about, he said, "I tell you the truth." King James probably says, "Verily, verily," like I'm really telling you the truth. Listen to me here. John 10, 1 through 5. So now shepherds, they would come into town, so to speak, and there would be multiple shepherds, and they would have this place that they could go and put their flocks. And there'd be a person who would, watch over it. Now, either they could get some sleep or maybe get some supplies, whatever they were coming into town for. So in this huge pen would be these multiple flocks that belonged to different people. So they would be all in this one thing, and there'd be this guy over it. And so he starts off by first saying that a man who doesn't go through the gate of this pen, of this sheepfold, is a thief and a robber. See, the shepherd don't have reason to climb a fence, and he'll just go through the gate. So he says, first of all, if somebody's coming for the sheep, climbing the fence, the watchman who's watching over the flock knows that's a thief and a robber. That's not he ain't got no sheep here. That's a thief and a robber. So we can recognize him because he's coming some other way. So the shepherd is going to come by way of the gate. And the gatekeeper or the watchman is going to open up the gate to him. And he's going to get his sheep. Now, as stupid as they make sheep out to be, and they're very, I won't use the word stupid, they're very needy. That's what sheep are. They're needy. They need to be taken care of in order to survive. They're needy. And so as needy as they are, they know who to need. They need their shepherd. So whatever shepherd is their shepherd, and they've learned his voice. Now that's not, it sounds fascinating, but your dog, if you have a dog, your dog would know you. He's not comforted by some stranger. He's not obedient to somebody else's voice. He hears your voice. And so animals they got a little bit on us in some areas. This might be one. They know who to listen to. And if the dog bites the hand that feeds it, as the saying goes, usually the owner puts it down because something wrong with it. He's sick, something wrong with him. So they put him down because that's not normal. Dogs don't bite the hand to feed them. So here is saying that this shepherd will go in to these sheep that are all mixed, and he calls to his sheep, and his sheep respond to him. And once he gets them all out of the pen, he leads them. And it says, because they know his voice. And a stranger they will not follow because they don't recognize his voice. So we've heard in some of the testimony that, I did recognize the voice of the stranger. That wasn't who I should be listening to, so I didn't listen to him. So if it's a strange voice, it says, in fact, they will run away from it. It's like, I will run from it. I don't just say, you ain't talking to me. They run from it. They flee from a stranger's voice. So there's extreme necessity in knowing the voice of Yahweh. It's what's going to keep you through, I'll just put a period there. It's what's going to keep you through. Whatever. It's what's going to keep you through. It's what's going to take you through. It's what's going to maintain you, is knowing the voice of Yahweh. So, and with these verses, what we also know is there's a lot of other voices out there. So there's a lot of voices, so you got to know his voice. So, we're children of Yahweh, so we can take Ephesians, and the scripture says we're the sheep of his pasture. So we can take John and know that he's talking to me. He's talking to us. And so one of the things that we need to know is, how do we know his voice? How do we get to know his voice? Because I've been around. Hey, I've done it myself. Somebody's come up to me after the service, and Yahweh was all talking to me. And somebody come and said, why didn't you bring that word Yahweh gave you? I said, what you talking about? I thought he was talking to me. But it was a word he was giving me. I didn't know. I mean, I knew the voice was Yahweh, but I just figured it was just for me. But there are people who will say, well, I didn't know it was Yahweh. I didn't know it was Yahweh. I didn't know if it was Yahweh. And so, after a while, that's a real pathetic excuse. So you need to know, and if that's not an excuse, if you're really serious that you don't recognize the voice, you need to know you're in trouble, because that means any voice can come and talk to you and disguise itself and call itself the voice of Yahweh. Know that really happens. That really happens, disguising itself as the voice of Yahweh. How we get to know a voice is by the time we spend. The time we spend. I think most of the mothers in here would recognize their child's voice. Be in the kitchen, put all the moms in the kitchen. We're all cooking, doing dishes, whatever. Some kid out here starts to scream it. Denise, that's one of yours, it ain't mine. Tears to be like, oh, that's his. A mother's going to know, but she don't necessarily know it at first, because when she first gets that baby, she knows it's him because he's the only baby in the house. But when we go out and there's a few babies and a baby cries, a mom do this. Oh, he's okay. She don't know it yet. She don't know that. She don't recognize it yet. But as she spends time with this child, she gets to know, his voice, his scream, his holler, his no. She gets to know it. And she gets to recognize it because she's invested time and conversation with it. Now, I think for most of the kids I hear, I could probably do fairly well. I don't know that I'd be 100% accurate. But I have time in. I have some time in. It's not mom or dad's time, but I have some. So I could be fairly well but I could still fall short. I could still miss the mark. With my kids, they've been trained, especially Danny and Will, because they still live at home with me. And they used to both occupy the third floor. So I would come in, know somebody was upstairs, and I'd holler, "Who's up there?" Me. When I get one word, I don't know who it is because they sound alike. They sound alike. So I have to go, "Me who?" So now if you get 2 or 3 words, I'll know which one it is. But just with one word, especially a me, I don't know. Now Denise can call me, and I don't have to say, "Who's this?" I know her voice because of the interaction, because we spend some time together. So you don't get to know Yahweh's voice if you don't spend time with Yahweh. If you're not in his word. Now, you know, we think of voice, we think of this verbal thing. This is the voice of Yahweh. You know, this is not, and the truth of the matter is you can pretty much do it with any author who's written several books. Any author that's written several books have a style and a verbiage. And if somebody, used their name and printed something, you would be able to tell. Now, see, this is why I say the book of Hebrews is written by the Apostle Paul. I've read Ephesians and Corinthians and Romans, and it sure writes the same. Have the same verbiage. It's the Apostle Paul. I'm giving him credit for the book of Hebrews. But this is unlike other written material. This is alive. This is a living word. Actually, we're in John chapter 10. Go to John chapter 1. The word became flesh. The voice of Yahweh took on flesh and bone, became a man, and walked around the earth speaking. Red letter Bible people. John chapter 10, 1 through 5 is his words. His verbal words written in a book. Okay, so this is the voice of Yahweh. Do you want to know the voice of Yahweh? You need to be in this. Reading, studying, praying, talking with Father Yahweh, not talking at him, talking with him. And you need to be hearing the people that Yahweh puts in places. That's where we were in Ephesians. The apostles and the prophets and the teachers and the preacher, pastors. That the evangelists, hearing them. Now you're going to be on your own doing this, and you'll be hearing them in your ear, and you're going to be able to tell when some man comes to you and says, well, this is how it is. And you're going to be like, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I've had people when I was younger, a lot younger, come to me and say, oh, your mother was calling, wanted you, and she said blah, 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 blah. I'd be like, that ain't my mother. Because that's not how she don't talk like that. Now, did you paraphrase? Because that's not my mom. I'm not hearing her voice. I'm hearing somebody tell me what she said. And I know that's not her. So when a preacher stands up and says this, I can sit there and say, that is not Yahweh. I can recognize the voice. And we have to be able to do that. It's our well-being that's in charge. If somebody were to go to the children and say, your mom, your dad said thus and so, some of these kids are being taken with these ruses. Your dad sent me to get you. You know, you need to know that, and my dad would not do that. He's not going to send somebody I don't know. He's not going to, you need to know that is not my dad. He doesn't function like that's not his voice. See, the voice is more than just this verbiage, just this hearing of, like you're hearing me speak. It's more than just that. It's more than just that. It's knowing how Yahweh talks. It's knowing the types of things Yahweh would say. It's recognizing his voice. Now, we're sometimes maybe get it wrong as we're learning, as we're trying to figure it out. But it's a learning process. We can look at Samuel, who, he's being raised up in the tabernacle of Yahweh. He didn't know the voice of Yahweh either. Granted, he was young, but Yahweh was talking to him. Samuel. He run into Eli. Eli, you call me? I didn't call you. He go back to bed. Samuel. Eli, you call me? What's up? I didn't call you, boy. Go back to bed. Samuel. Eli. Now, Eli figured it out. So let me tell you what you need to do, Samuel. When you hear your name being called again, you say, yes, Yah, what you got to say. Samuel didn't recognize the voice of Yahweh. He had to be taught. He had to be taught to recognize the voice. This is where this comes into play. Interacting with one another, where the gifts can function, where the pastor can do his thing, and the teachers can do their thing, and the evangelists can do their, where the gifts can flow to help teach how to recognize the voice of Yahweh. Without this, and you just have that, then you're going to be like, well, I thought it was you, and maybe it was you. It's got to be all working together. You can't pick it apart and say, well, half them preachers I don't like. I'm going to just study the word of Yahweh, and I don't need fellowship either. I can just study on my own. Let me give you some little, and I know this firsthand. People who study all by themselves get some really weird doctrine. Not off doctrine, slight. I'm talking really weird doctrine. Because, see, I'm dependent on me to interpret that. I'm dependent on me, which is a problem. See, I need to be taught, and so we learn it from experience. Samuel learned and recognized the voice of Yahweh to the place where he gets to, and, he's mourning for Saul. And Yahweh said, I'm done with him. Stop your crying. He's like, okay, let's shake it off and move on. He knew that was Yahweh. Now, some of us, Yahweh come talking to us and say, so-and-so, don't pray for them anymore. I'm done with them. You'd be like, oh, Yahweh wouldn't say anything like that. That's not Yahweh. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And had you known this, you would have known he did do that before. Now, I'm not saying run on it. That would be something I'd be checking and waiting for witnesses about, because we don't want to just cut people off. But I'm saying you got to, and that's one of the things about knowing the voice. If you don't know the voice, some of us are cutting people off. Yahweh didn't tell you to cut them off. Some of us are sticking with people that Yahweh said cut off. Some of us are doing things and not doing things because we don't know the voice. We're not sure about what it is that Yahweh wants for us. We'll sit there and say, I don't know what the will of Yahweh is. Why not? See, this is not Yahweh's problem. This is your problem. So either you're not listening or you're listening to some other voice. Something's wrong, but it's with you that the something is wrong. It's very important that we know the voice of Yahweh and we hear the voice of Yahweh. And if you look up the word hear in the Bible, it's not just talking about I just heard you audibly. It's talking about the whole follow through. I heard you and I did what you said. And the bottom line is that's what we mean when we say the hear word too. Now we'll use it as an excuse. Oh, you really meant for me to do that? I heard what you said, but I didn't know you really meant for me to do that. But as a parent, go clean your room. And then later it's like, they didn't do it. What's the first thing I'm on? Didn't you not hear me? Didn't you hear me? Well, yeah, they heard you, but you're equating their hearing with doing. So is Yahweh. If you're hearing the voice of Yahweh, you better be following through. Not just hearing and making excuse. Oh, I heard that you said, but you meant for me to do that? Oh, I didn't understand that. No. When you hear the voice of Yahweh, Yahweh expects you to follow through. How important is this? How important is it to recognize the voice? How important is it to obey the voice when I hear it? You know, we are very comfortable, very laxed. It's our culture. You know, that we're at this point in the wonderful United States of America, have a lot of liberties. We have our religious freedoms. We can meet on the Sabbath, and we can call his name Yahweh. We can call his son's name Yahshua, and we're fine. People might look at us funny sometimes, but, you know, there's no problem. You know, there's no big issues with us. Where in other countries, people are hiding they can't have a Bible. They're suffering persecution. So here we're kind of laxed. And it causes a problem because we don't understand the necessity, you know, oh, Yahweh understands. You know, I've been there, and I can't say that I've perfected it yet. Yahweh says to do stuff, and I'm kind of slowful. You know, I'm sitting there trying to figure out, okay, Yahweh told me this. Okay, Yahweh, why'd you tell this to me? Am I supposed to pray about it, go speak to somebody, buy something? I mean, what is it I'm supposed to do with what I know? Now, that's not necessarily bad. It's that, like 6 months later, I'm still trying to figure out, because he's still telling me, well, when you going to do that thing I told you to do? And we just, oh, Yahweh understands. You know, he's a God of love, and he knows it's really what you know. And believe you me, I love you all. I mean, really love you all. Really love you all. I'm not looking for that. But I got stuck because I wasn't brought up in a household that you talk like that, and you don't touch and hug, and you don't do that. But I never questioned, you know, that. But I came across a scripture that said, love in deed and in word. So I can't just like pop up with a gift for you. I was thinking of you. Look, I need to be telling y'all, I love you. I miss you. It's not just deed, it's word. And it's not just word without action. You know, that's why some people say, I love you. Mm-hmm, yeah. Ain't no action. I ain't never seen no action. So when you say I love you, it means like nothing. So same thing with, I love you, Yah. Where's the action? Where's the obedience in hearing what I say? So we're going to go look at 1 Kings, and we're going to look at how essential this is to know his voice. Not just from people, wicked people out on the street come say, oh, yeah, man, buy this, some hot, something that they just stole, the wicked people. But the people under the guise of pretense as being Yahweh's people. See, this is where we're more likely to get in trouble. We recognize the wicked, but it's the people that come in the guise of Yahweh's name. And they say things, and we don't recognize that's not Yahweh. They're the ones that are more detrimental to us. We need to know the voice of Yahweh. 1 Kings chapter 13, verses 1, I think, through 30. It's pretty long. Pretty long read. I'm going to be reading from NIV. By the word of Yahweh, a man of God came from Judah to Bethel. Now, I guess before I really should start reading this story, let me give you a little bit of background. Israel is divided. Rehoboam, Jeroboam. Now, Rehoboam had the southern tribes. He had Judah and Benjamin, some Levites, and they were maintaining their worship to Father Yahweh at Jerusalem, at the temple where Yahweh had said, this is where you go. So Jeroboam, who's got the 10 tribes up there, he's a little bit concerned that he will lose his people. They're going to go down to Jerusalem and worship Father Yahweh, and then they're going to want to come back and kill him because he ain't right. So he decided he would set up 2 golden calves, one in Bethel and one in Dan. 2 golden calves, along with altars where the people can come instead of having to see. Don't it make sense? Oh, y'all don't have to go all the way down to Jerusalem. You can come right here and do your sacrifice and offer to Yahweh. And so this is what he did. So this is where the story comes up from. By the word of Yahweh, a man of Elohim came from Judah to Bethel, which is where one of the golden calves is, as Jeroboam was standing by the altar to make an offering. He cried out against the altar, the man of Yahweh, cried out against the altar by the word of Yahweh. So he's inspired by the word of Yahweh, and he's talking to the altar. Oh, altar, altar, this is what Yahweh says. A son named Josiah will be born to the house of Judah, of David. On you he will sacrifice the priests of the high places, who now make offerings here, and human bones will be burned on you. Now Jeroboam's getting ready to make his offering unto Yahweh on this altar. And here is this man of Yahweh prophesying that what's going to happen is one day there's going to be a king in Judah who's going to come up and kill the priests that are making sacrifice on this altar and burn them on that very altar. That same day, the man of God gave a sign. This is the sign Yahweh has declared. The altar will be split apart, and the ashes on it will be poured out. When King Jeroboam heard what the man of Elohim cried out against the altar at Bethel, he stretched out his hand from the altar and said, "Seize him." Remember, he's the king, so he didn't come alone. He got his little entourage with him. But the hand he stretched out toward the man shriveled up, so that he could not pull it back. Also, the altar was split apart, and its ashes poured out according to the sign given by the man of Elohim by the word of Yahweh. Then the king said to the man of Elohim, intercede with Yahweh, your Elohim, and pray for me that my hand may be restored. So the man of Elohim interceded with Yahweh, and the king's hand was restored and became as it was before. The king said to the man of Elohim, come home with me and have something to eat, and I will give you a gift. But the man of Elohim answered the king, even if you were to give me half your possessions, I would not go with you, nor would I eat bread or drink water here. For I was commanded by the word of Yahweh, you must not eat bread or drink water or return by the way you came. You hear that? I was commanded by the word of Yahweh. So he took another road and did not return by the way he had come to Bethel. Now there was a certain old prophet living in Bethel, whose sons came and told him all that the man of Elohim had done there that day. They also told their father what he had said to the king. The father asked him, which way did he go? And the son showed him which road the man of Elohim from Judah had taken. So he said to his sons, saddle the donkey for me. And when they had saddled the donkey for him, he mounted it and rode after the man of Elohim. He found him sitting under an oak tree and asked, are you the man of Elohim who came from Judah? I am, he replied. So the prophet said to him, come home with me and eat. Then the man of Elohim said, I cannot turn back and go with you, nor can I eat bread or drink water with you in this place. I have been told by the word of Yahweh, you must not eat bread or drink water there, or return by the way you came. The old prophet answered, I too am a prophet as you are. And an angel said to me by the word of Yahweh, bring him back with you to your house so that he may eat bread and drink water. But he was lying to him. So the man of Elohim returned with him and ate and drank in his house. While they were sitting at a table, the word of Yahweh came to the old prophet who had brought him back. He cried out to the man of Elohim who had come from Judah, this is what Yahweh says. You have defied the word of Yahweh and have not kept the commandment of Yahweh, your Elohim, gave you. You came back and you ate bread and drank water in the place where he told you not to eat or drink. Therefore, your body will not be buried in the tomb of your fathers. When the man of Elohim had finished eating and drinking, the prophet who had brought him back saddled his donkey for him. As he went on his way, a lion met him on the road and killed him. And his body was thrown down on the road with both the donkey and the lion standing beside it. Some people who passed and saw the body thrown down there with the lion standing beside the body, and they went and reported it in the city where the old prophet lived. When the prophet who had brought him back from his journey heard of it, he said, it is the man of Elohim who defied the word of Yahweh. Yahweh has given him over to the lion, which has mauled him and killed him, as the word of Yahweh had warned him. The prophet said to his son, "Saddle the donkey for me," and they did so. Then he went out and found the body thrown down on the road, with the donkey and the lion standing beside it. The lion had neither eaten the body nor mauled the donkey. So the prophet picked up the body of the man of Elohim, laid it on the donkey, and brought it back to his own city to mourn for him and bury him. Then he laid the body in his own tomb, and they mourned over him and said, "Oh, my brother." After burying him, he said to his sons, "When I die, bury me in the grave where the man of Elohim is buried. Lay my bones beside his bones." For the message he declared by the word of Yahweh against the altar in Bethel and against all the shrines on the high places in the towns of Samaria will certainly come to pass. You need to know the voice of Yahweh, and you need to do what he says to do, even though somebody else come to you and tell you something contrary. No matter who they are. This is a prophet. And he said, "I'm a prophet like you." And this is what Yahweh told me. Now, nowhere does this call this prophet from Judah young. We call this the story of the young and the old prophet. But I believe he was young, not necessarily in age, but in his experience. And in that, he trusted this older person, as we do. As we do. But he wasn't sure of the voice of Yahweh. That's what got him in trouble. He started off with a surety, but when this old prophet comes to him and said, "Oh no, I got a word." And the word I got said, "You need to come home with me and let me feed you." He needed to be able to recognize that that was not the voice of Yahweh. And he didn't, and it cost him his life. The bottom line is we ourselves are responsible for our own walk. In order to really know his voice, we need to invest time, personal time into his word, sitting time under those that Yah has put his word in, so that when one comes, and they will come continuously over the years of your walk, speaking something contrary, no matter how small it is, you will recognize the voice of the stranger and flee. Run from it. Don't have a conversation. Don't try to have a debate. Flee from it. Run from it. Do not give it heed. It's not the voice of Yahweh. You don't need to listen to it. You don't need to say, what you got to say? That's where we get in trouble. This is when we get in trouble, when we begin to listen to these things that are contrary. The second you know, it's vitally important that you know the voice of Yahweh, or we're going to end up like that prophet from Judah, walking the course, doing what Yahweh said. I mean, he went into Bethel, prophesied right in front of the king. The king was ready to seize him, but Yahweh had his hand of protection upon him and dried up that king's hand, and then heard his cry and then performed the sign that he had said. And the man was well on his way back home to safety because he had done what Yahweh had said, but he didn't finish it. He didn't finish it. Instead, he listened to another voice and ended up dying. cost him his life. We've been making mistakes as we learn, and Yahweh's gracious and he teaches us, but you need to recognize the voice. You need to learn the voice. We cannot be under Yahweh for years, and when he speaks in our ear, say, I don't know if that's Yahweh. Because Yahweh, see, that's at some point, that's an excuse for us not to do. We know it's Yahweh. And Yahweh, and more importantly, Yahweh knows you know it's him. And then you got to give an account for your disobedience. Because when you don't hear what Yahweh has to say and follow through, you're in sin. You're in sin. So we need to invest our time in the Word. We need to invest our time in studies with individuals and begin to know without a doubt, that's the word of Yahweh. That's the voice of Yahweh. That's Yahweh telling me to do this. And then hear and obey.
Recognize the voice.